ahead and then I'll take it from there.
Okay, well, briefly, as you probably can tell, I am, and I don't like use the word super all that often, but I am super excited to have this team, this group of good-hearted individuals with lots of talents convened together for our first formal meeting as the advisory committee. The work, as far as the city of Manzanita goes, this has been quite a while in the works, and we've been talking about it at council meetings and with the public for well over a year now, and it's on our priority list. We've done all the things to make sure we're set up right, letting the public know and become aware of the fact of, in some cases, what the comprehensive plan is, the fact that it's time to definitely get back to work on ours, and what that would look like. And we got over the initial hump of it's going to take how long? So well, I'm not sure we're through that hump with everybody, but we at least introduced the notion that this is a good substantial piece of work that done well will be done solidly, and we will hit deliverables over time. But it is not an overnight project. It's not a, what am I in the mood for today? I mean, this is serious work. And one of the things I hope we'll accomplish is that the community, the broad community, everyone in our community will understand that by the time that we are finished doing our jobs here. So it seems like forever ago, but it was only March that we did the first round of interviews for several of you who were on the committee, and then a couple more folks were added. We still got two folks from the business community that are not going to join until later because we are sort of jumping in on this at the very peak of retail season here in Manzanita. So we'll, I won't forget that they're there, but we'll be introducing them, and particularly when we talk about the business community later. So yeah, I'm very pleased. It's as I've said to everyone, this is new work for me. I really love planning. I love community engagement. I'm excited about what's to come. And as I always am, I'm excited to work with people who are very competent in their field and will help guide us to do the work really well. So that's my intro, and we'll just get on to the next piece with Layla. But thank you very much in advance for the work we're all about to do together.
Thanks, Mayor. Catherine, really appreciate it. So I'll be quick. I think the sort of icebreaker here we were asked to do is sort of what do you love about Manzanita? But just, I think I know everybody here, but in case I don't, Layla Oman, I'm the city manager. Also no stranger to long range and comprehensive planning. In fact, my career started in comp planning and a degree in land use planning. So I'm very excited to kind of be getting back to my roots, but also very excited that I have a wonderful team who will introduce themselves that will be leading us through the process. So the thing I love most about Manzanita is really what brought me here, which is it's a small town and there's a great opportunity for change. In fact, one of my mentors, who is Scott Fregonesi's father, the late great John Fregonesi, I think I can attribute his guidance to bringing me to a small town because of the great work that one can do when you engage with thoughtful, kind, well-meaning folks who really know their communities better than anyone, and working together to realize the hopes and visions that these good people have. And so this town is chock full of them. There's a good handful of you here today. So I love that I get to do that with all of you. So I think maybe to make this efficient, I think we should pass it on to somebody else. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Constance because she's right next to me on the Hollywood Squares.
Okay. You can call me Connie. And I love Manzanita because of the size. Also, of course, the weather, the scenery, but I've lived in a variety of size communities, and it's really nice to get your bearings in a place like this. That's it.
Thanks. How about John?
Which one?
Yeah, which one? That's right.
Collier, you said something first, so why don't you?
All right. I'm John Collier, and represent the Planning Commission as a liaison to this great group we've got going here. I love Manzanita similarly to Constance, or Connie, sorry. I like its size. I like its quaintness. I've always lived near the ocean and love that. Couldn't go far without that. And the closeness sort of makes it nearer to nature, which I also love. So there you go. My goal is to keep that as, move forward, be progressive, but keep as much as the nature and small town feel that we've got going now.
Thanks, John. Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Kessner, and gosh, I've been visiting Manzanita since '94, and I think I fell in love with it because of its beauty and remoteness. But the more I live here, the more I really love the community here. It's really important to me that we make sure everyone understands what we're trying to achieve here, and it's such great people. In my other volunteer work, I've just always been impressed that it seems like no matter what you need, there's somebody here with that skill, and it's pretty amazing for such a small place.
Thanks, Linda. Scott Frago.
All right. I'm Scott Freganesi. I'm a senior project manager with 3J Consulting. I recognize several of you. I've been assisting with some of the current planning, so working with Planning Commission. So I'm familiar with Manzanita, which I think is going to help part of this process, being involved with current planning and also doing this long range stuff gives you some good perspective. Thank you, Layla, for mentioning my dad. It was great. Layla and I got to work together for several years at a consulting firm that my dad used to lead. So it's great that his presence is here to help us guiding the community and creating vision. So it's pretty cool. Looking forward to this process, this project. It's going to be fun. Thanks for helping us.
Thanks, Scott. Patrick.
Hello, I'm Patrick Johnston, born and raised in Oregon, and since I was a kid, I've been coming to the coast. The thing that I love about Manzanita is not only is it probably one of the most beautiful places that I've been throughout the United States. It's a small town that has everything that I need from a big town. So, there are only 600 folks that live here, and yet we have an art gallery, we have a bookstore, we have a couple groceries, in addition to all the beautiful things that you get to see from the beach to the river to the mountain. So I'm not sure there is a more special place, and I feel very, very lucky to be a part of it.
Thanks, Patrick. Brian.
Feel like I'd just be repeating what everybody else said, but I chose to live here because of its location and proximity to Portland, partly, and because while it has all those things that you guys talked about, it's compact and beautiful and lovable, and the scenery around here is so great. But also, if you need to, you can go to Portland in an hour and a half. So it's not near as remote as it feels. And I just really want to live somewhere that's small and compact, and I can walk everywhere. And, like Patrick said, walk to the grocery store and go pick up my mail. And I just think that's the way to live your life.
Thanks, Brian. Marcy.
Hi, everyone. Marcy McAnally. I'm an architect, and but I've turned my attention to urban design and trying to change zoning codes over the last several decades of my career has become my focus. And I'm actually really excited about this period in Oregon because we're focusing on middle housing and the integration of a wider variety of housing types. And I know that that's a focus of this project. And I actually do have a period in my life of a couple of decades ago where I spent quite a bit of time in Manzanita because of a relationship. And I came to love the city, the town. It's a little city because it has all those parts that you've been talking about. It's complete. it's got a totally different personality of all the North Coast towns. I think, and that's one of the reasons that I fell in love with it. As you go down the coast and you pass by through the main street or the downtown and see the neighborhoods of each of the towns, and you get to Manzanita, it's just when the avenue is really different than anywhere else. And it's got a unique personality. The buildings, the signage, the art, they all reflect that. They seem to be kind of evolved out of its uniqueness. So I'm very thrilled, grateful to be able to help you on this part of your project. And I'll pass it over to Violet.
Nice, thank you, Marcy. I am Violet Brown. I'm an urban planner with 3J Consulting, working with Scott Fregonesi. And Layla also mentioned Scott's father. He was my mentor as well, back when I was a student at PSU and interned for him. And so I'm just really excited to work on this project. I have a history in housing. I used to be a housing advocate in New York City. But before that, I grew up in a small town in Louisiana, about 20 minutes from the coast. But we did not have a bookstore, which might be why I live in Oregon now instead of small town Louisiana. But I'm super excited to be working on this project and to be working with Layla again as well. So I think this is a good group.
Thanks, Violet. How about Rick?
Yeah, just 3 quick points from me. So my wife Wendy and I retired to Manzanita 2 years ago, having lived the previous 13 years in England. And point number 1, Manzanita offers all that I fell in love with about an English village, that everything is walkable distance. And as mentioned previously, everything that you need is here. Secondly, I would say the supernatural beauty of this place. It's just jaw-dropping what's on our front doorsteps every day, and I never take that for granted. And then thirdly, the lack of the flavor of Anywhere USA, the commercial signage, the next franchise, whatever. I love that we are that unique kind of community.
Thanks, Rick. How about pass the baton to Mark?
Sure. So my name is Mark Adamson. Might help to hear my last name spoken if it's a little intimidating. I certainly have fallen in love with Manzanita for all the same reasons. I think the core one was being able to meet so many of my neighbors. My wife Megan and I moved from Portland in full-time in 2021, and we moved away from a very suburban neighborhood where we barely knew our next door neighbors. So really the community is what locked us in. But also I was born and raised in Southern Arizona. So one of the unique elements of the environment here that I'm always very impressed with is all the different kinds of water. There's ocean water, river water, there's flowing water and falling water. I just never knew that so many different forms of water were possible.
So many descriptions of rain too.
Yeah.
How about you, John Ryman? Finally.
Yeah. I love Manzanita because of the ocean. For the most part, I learned how to kite surf, and it's a new passion of mine that I'll probably do this afternoon. And born and raised in Portland, a lot of trips as a boy to the coast, mainly Rockaway because our neighbors had a place there, but always was intrigued by Manzanita, and now I have a place here, which I cherish. I have a background in civil engineering. I'm familiar with John's name too over the years. I've been doing civil engineering for the last 40 years in the Portland area, and kind of gotten into more the land use planning side because it's intriguing to me in my later life, believe it or not. So I'm really excited to be a part of this group and help through the comp plan process.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Journey.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Journey Gehring, and I am an associate planner with 3J Consulting.
I've been with 3J for about 1.5 years. I grew up in a small town, Carlton, Oregon, and I spent many day trips coming to the coast and enjoying the natural beauty. So I'm really excited to be in Manzanita and excited to hear from you all as we go through the process.
Thanks, Journey. And last but not least, Linda.
My name is Linda Kozlowski. I am on the city council and I'm the alternate to Catherine. The first time I saw Manzanita, we were out camping and we came around Neocotty Mountain and I looked down at Manzanita and I thought, what a magical place that is. You could see the ocean, you could see the mountains, you could see the lake. I mean, it just blew me away. Never thinking I would actually have the wonderful ability to actually move here. And moving here, it's met all of my expectations. It's a magical village. The people are wonderful. Like Linda K2 said, they're willing to help. They work together. We all work together. And it truly is a magical place. And I am thankful I'm here.
Thanks, Linda. I think that does it. We have Scott Gebhardt's here, and he's with our planning department and our building official as well. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott Frago to get us going.
All right. Figuring out how to share my screen here real quick, and then we'll get going. Okay, we'll jump into the PowerPoint. Share my screen. And I'll just do this. Is everyone able to see that?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Great. So we're going to do our best to get us all through in 2 hours, just because we want to respect everyone's time. So we have, an hour and 40 minutes, which should be plenty. I do love conversation. So if you do have questions throughout this, please just raise your hand or put a note in the chat. We can answer questions or stop me if I am not making sense or you need some clarification. I'd appreciate that too. And this is our first advisory committee, first of 8 that we'll be doing over the next year plus, working with you on updating the comp plan and your middle housing code. So it should be an interesting process. I mean, I really appreciate your time as a committee. Today, the agenda is welcome introductions, which we've already done. We'll go over your role as a committee, do a brief project overview in terms of what a comprehensive plan is. Marcy's going to help talk through some of the housing ordinance work. So, and then we'll look at the community engagement plan that was in your packet. We'll do a brief overview of that, as well as the community conversations kit that was in that packet. Next steps and adjourn. So pretty straightforward agenda today. I wanted to talk about your roles and responsibilities as a committee. First off, hopefully you were able to take a look at the charter that was in the packet as well. It kind of goes over your responsibilities and roles and things like that. But really what your role and your responsibility is as the PAC is we want you to be the leaders of this plan. So we're going to ask you to be involved in 8 meetings over this year and next. Any products we're going to share with the public or put on the website, we're going to bring to you first. So you are our sounding board for work products and things that we are going to be making public. And then also one big thing will be assisting with public outreach and engagement efforts. If we rely on city staff to do that, we won't be successful. If we rely on the consultant team, we won't be successful. We need to rely on the staff's consultant team as well as the committee to help to make sure we have really robust engagement efforts throughout the comp plan update. Obviously your liaisons through your groups that you may be involved in and bringing those in as well. We're going to ask you to actually host your own public events. If you look through the community conversation kit, that's that tool there. Also encourage your friends and family to be involved. And then once we get to the point where we're looking at adoption and getting this through, we want you to act as champions. Hopefully by the time we get through this whole process, you'll want to stand up and say, hey, yes, we need this plan and this is why. So that role as a champion of the plan is important as well. In terms of your the charter itself, there's some things we want you to acknowledge in terms of what your duties are. I kind of went through those in terms of the meetings, your responsibilities as a committee member, how we're going to do the decision-making process in terms of we want, you know, committee members to strive for consensus on recommendations. We want you to not visit decisions or agreements. So really, this is a way for us to come together as a group and make sure that the products we're producing meet your expectations. There's also some ground rules for meeting conduct in there. And this is real standard stuff, but I always like to say it, you know, it's, you know, things like respect each other, you know, make sure that your concerns are brought into the process and can be addressed. You know, let's refrain from personal attacks. Be mindful of those around us in terms of emails and the way you speak about things, because this group is representing the plan. Rick, you have a question?
I do. Thanks for seeing that. Will we get a copy of this presentation, Scott?
Yes, we'll get a copy of this, and we also have a project website that I will get to. We're going to show you a little highlight of that. All the meetings, all the meeting packets, all the information for all the meetings will be put on the public website so that not just the committee can see them, but the general public can see them. As well as these meetings are being recorded, so those will be located, links to those meetings on the website as well as on the city's YouTube channel. So for sure, all of these products are going to be made available to the larger public as well as the committee.
That answer will help determine how many notes I take. So thank you.
Sounds good. That's a great question. So yeah, there's just some ground rules for meeting and conduct, and I understand. I think this is a great group. We all know how to be respectful and understanding and work together as a team. So that's the goal. And then in terms of communication, I think we have an email that I'll share. That'll be Cody is his name. He's going to start as an intern and help with Layla manage this project. So any communications will run through him. In terms of meetings, most of these are going to be regular Zoom meetings. We'll see how fast City Hall comes along until we can hop in there. Hopefully we can use the new City Hall once it's done. And then attendance, if you're not able to make the meeting, it's not the end of the world, but we would like you to let us know ahead of time so we won't be expecting you. So just some ground rules. We'll ask you at the end of this to kind of take a look at that charter that we sent and acknowledge it in the next week or so. So we're just to make sure we're all on the same page. And for your meeting logistics, this is kind of what you're getting to, Rick, in terms of where these products are and whatnot. But we really want you to provide comments on the work products probably about a week after this meeting. So we'll give you about a week to take a look at some of this stuff and get back to us. If you don't have to get back to us, if you don't get back to us, that's fine. That acknowledges that you think everything is good to go. We will be providing a meeting summary the first Monday after each of these meetings. So next Monday, we'll provide the meeting summary. You can take a look at those. Generally, you probably won't have comments, but if you do have comments, let us know that week so that we can make sure that the meeting summary really reflects what you felt like the meeting consisted of. All the materials will be put on the website afterward, so that then after I mention that, so that you and the general public can review those. We will be scheduling the meetings about a month before the meeting time, so be ready to see those doodle polls or some sort of method to schedule those meetings about 4 weeks ahead of time. So our next meeting's in September, so in August you will be seeing the scheduling for that meeting. So that kind of covers the logistics of the committee itself. Violet, would you like to jump in for the timeline?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I was going to jump in and say, yes, about a month before each of your meetings, be looking for an email from me with the dreaded doodle poll. And I think everyone did quite well on our first one, despite me being stranded during a hurricane. And so I appreciate everybody responding to that. So we have the timeline here. This graphic is going to go on the website. And you may have seen it was also in the draft engagement plan we shared. You'll see how we take each of the spots as part of the comprehensive plan and kind of move through over the next about 24 months. And so one of the things for you guys to notice is the small blue dots are your meetings. We have them just kind of roughly in July. I think we got in under the wire here with this one. And then we, like Scott said, the next one in September. You'll notice that comes right before a pretty green star, which is when we're going to try to schedule a milestone where we're engaging the larger public. So when we have like a community event, a community workshop, an open house, those type of events. And so we have 4 of those kind of spaced throughout the project. And as Scott said, we really want to kind of vet all of our ideas and products through this committee before we present to the public. So for our big fall first workshop, we have scheduled 2 meetings with this committee in advance to kind of get through how the project's going. Scott, if you could show the next slide. You'll see each of those 4, and again, this was in the public, in the draft engagement plan that we sent you, if you had a chance to look at it. If you didn't, as Scott said, you will have time after each meeting to, we'll give you highlights from the packet that you received, and then you'll have some time after the meeting to give us written comments back on the packet if there's any edits or anything that you want to see changed before it goes up on the website. We'll allow time for that each time. You'll see that we really kind of tried to phase these big community workshops into 4 phases. Since this comp plan is happening at the same time as the housing ordinance update, which Marcy will be talking about in a minute, we're really kind of leading kind of housing forward with our conversation with the public, and we've paired that with community engagement, citizen involvement, and natural resources. I heard a lot of people at the beginning of this meeting talking about just the amazing open space, scenery in Manzanita. So we're kind of going to start engaging the public around those ideas, right? What we're required by law to do around the housing code, and then also starting to talk, what are our goals with community engagement and preserving natural spaces within the community. The second round is in the spring, and we'll be coming back and really dig into land use planning, energy conservation, urbanization, and public facilities and services. At that time, we'll also have some things to report to you guys and to the public around the progress that's been made on the housing code work. So again, that phase, you'll see those goals listed there. Those are the Oregon statewide planning goals. We're required to tackle each of them in the comprehensive plan. So we're kind of using those as a framework to kind of shape our narrative at each time we go back to the public and say, okay, this is what we're talking about this time. Later, probably early summer of next year, we'll move from the kind of land use, urbanization, public facilities, and energy. We'll move into economic development and recreational needs, as well as at that point, we'll have adoption ready code update in code. So that's where we'll speak with the public, and then finish that last round in the fall around a lot of the statewide planning goals that focus on water quality, natural hazards, coastal shorelands, beaches, dunes, and the ocean. So if people from the public are asking kind of, when are we talking about this? It's really set up that way so that we can kind of tackle each thing at a time. And hopefully you feel like we've grouped them in a way that's kind of makes sense and is logical. Yes, I see a couple of hands. Layla.
Thanks, Violet. I just wanted to highlight too for folks, a lot of thought went into the phasing, because I want to remind everyone that we are actually on a timeline/deadline for the housing related work. So you might recall Senate Bill 406 was passed in the last legislative session, requires cities to adopt a middle housing. For us, it's an ordinance by July of 2025. So the way that the schedule is set up is to ensure that we are being responsive to the state laws that are now in place, and so that we can get that work completed and on its way to adoption by the time that we hit July. And I also want to note, and I want to shout out to my team too, that the city was awarded an additional, we have a grant from the Department of Land Conservation and Development to do this work. We got $50,000. And the state just awarded us an additional $28,000, which covers the cost of the housing code work. So just wanted to highlight that for folks. Of a lot of thought went into how this was organized, but the real main driver is we do have to have those adoption ready ordinance amendments by July of 2025. Thanks.
Yeah. Layla, I also think it makes sense, and I don't think it's just because I used to be a housing attorney that I like everything to be very housing forward. I actually think a lot of people, one of the things I thought about in phasing this is a lot of people come to the table with either housing affordability, and I know a lot of hands will come up, you know, short-term rentals. They want to talk about those issues, or about natural resources and preserving the kind of scenic quality. So again, I think it happens to be legally what we're required to do, but I also think it makes a certain amount of sense, and hopefully will naturally kind of follow the conversation that the public's trying to have with the project team. On the next slide.
I think it's my turn now.
Yeah, it's your turn.
And before I end on this, I would say that I really liked this when we were coming up with the kind of the strategy to break the plan chapters. Essentially, these goals will become your plan chapters. I've done a lot of comprehensive plan updates in the state right now, and many times cities will take on all at once. And it can be overwhelming to have thinking about all these 19 goals all at once. So I do think it is beneficial, and it's a good strategy to kind of break this into digestible chunks to bring you all along, as well as the larger community. So I think it's a good strategy. All right, jumping into the project overview. So what is a comp plan, and why do we have to do them? So in the 70s, all Oregon cities were required to develop a comprehensive plan, have a planning department, and follow the 19 statewide goals. So by law, each jurisdiction is required to have a comp plan. Typically, cities are supposed to update them every 5 years, maybe 10 years is a long time, but I don't see that a lot. So yours has not been updated in whole cloth. I know there's been small updates along the way, but it's time to update the comp plan. We're doing it not just because we're required to, but because there are issues in the community, housing, you know, coastal resources, these things that we need to update our comp plan to reflect. So that's really why we're doing it. In terms of the process we're going to take, we start with a background report. Where are you now? Where is Manzanita today? So that's demographics, that's mapping, that's all your review of all your current plans. I know you just adopted a transportation system plan, for example. That'll be part of that background report. The background report really lays the foundation for the comp plan as well. Elements of that background report will become the introduction to the plan, will become the demographics of in the plan. So that's kind of the first step. The second step is your vision. You know, your vision for we picked 2045, but maybe it's 2050. It's just your vision and where do you want to go. The cool thing is that you have your city manager, Layla, has kind of already laid this work out. You've been doing these listening sessions, you've involving the community. So we're jumping right into kind of verifying that vision and turning that around quick. So I think that's one of our main goals in this, is to kind of really nail that vision down. So we'll have the background report and the vision as the basis to start in on the plan. Then we work on those goals and policies. Those goals and policies will be specific to each of those chapters. So again, those statewide planning goals, what those goals and policies are, and then an action plan. So what are the steps and the actions to make those goals and policies reality? Which then turns into the overall comprehensive plan. So typically that comprehensive plan will be the vision, it will be the background reports, it will be all the goals and policies, the action plan. And not to mention, the one thing I didn't say was a land use map. Part of this process is going to be updating your future land use map, and potentially even we discussed how that ties into your zoning map as well. But part of a comp plan is what are the land uses and how do we develop that map? So we'll get a new map out of this as well. So I think that that's kind of the overall process and how we set up the development of a comprehensive plan. And I'll let you go, Marcy. And if you would like to tell me when you'd like to switch slides, I can do that.
Sure. I'm going to talk about the housing ordinance update piece, which, as you know, is happening first. So the DLCD mandate that we have is to create hearings-ready ordinance amendments. That means we'll be working through all the way to track changes documents, which members of the Planning Commission are quite familiar with, and working through all of the steps to get to that point on this project regarding housing. It goes a little bit beyond what a comprehensive plan project typically does, but that is kind of built into this particular project. The goal is to expand opportunity and accessibility for middle housing on all single-family detached lots. That's kind of the baseline and the mandate from the state. We could go beyond that. We could, in terms of middle housing in other locations too, we can tee that discussion up through this process that can be part of the housing vision. Supporting the development of accessory dwelling units, manufactured homes, and middle housing types. And I think you're probably all familiar with what middle housing is, but I'll just offer my simple definition. It's the housing that is not a single detached house on a lot, nor an apartment. It's all the kinds of housing in between that we have historically had in our cities. There used to be much more variety of housing choices for people in towns, small towns and bigger cities and throughout neighborhoods. And a lot of that went away after World War II and when we instituted much more suburban standards. So it's an exciting option. I think you have examples of this already in your town, and we'll be emulating many of those. So next slide, please. There are some specific products that we'll be working on over the next several months. The code first is the code audit and concepts, which I want to talk about a little bit more in the next few slides. But these are the basic products I'll be working on in coordination with the comprehensive plan process. The draft audit and concepts, and then the draft code update that comes out of the draft audit, sorry, the audit and concepts, which are, the audit and concepts are, I'll explain in a second, where we look at your code in great detail, identify the problems with it, then identify some conceptual solutions to those. And concepts are a lot easier for many people to grasp than a track change code edit, but it goes to eventually the concept becomes a track change code edit. So we'll have a draft code update and then a final code update. And each of these, or the draft code update will go through the process of your review, community review, and then back to a final code update. So if we could go to the next slide, I'll talk to you specifically about, yeah, let's just skip over this slide. What the code audit consists of. The 3 documents that I'll be studying consist of your zoning ordinance, your street improvement standards, and your subdivision standards. And I'm looking through those to find the barriers to middle housing types. And the barriers can be the use restrictions on a lot, but they can also be a little more subtle. They can be a lot size that maybe not explicitly prohibits a certain middle housing type, but discourages it. It can also be a procedure that places more requirements on a what we essentially would call a multi-dwelling arrangement than it does on a single dwelling arrangement. So we'll go through, identify all the things that are standing in the way of middle housing. We find these typically in parking regulations, but we also find them in street improvement standards. Like sometimes streets are not narrow enough to make certain middle housing types feasible financially or physically. So, and certain subdivision standards also can prohibit the creation of middle housing that's for home ownership. So one of our goals is to create smaller, compact middle housing options that can be owned, not just rented. But a mix is, ideally what we're aiming for, but sometimes getting a small compact dwelling unit on an ownable lot is tricky if you've got subdivision standards that do not make that easy. Do we have any questions at this point? I don't see any hands.
I would have a question and a comment. I think it's just going to be great and important to keep in mind that there's a real range of experience or lack of experience with this kind of work. So that would range from, and I'm not going to talk about city staff, but you've got John Collier, very familiar with this from a planning commission. You've got a lot of us who I'll just speak for myself, but I know I'm not alone. Some of this already feels a little bit like I'm not sure I really can track on it. So there's some learning I think we have to commit to as committee members. And so if you can be thinking about that for presentations or material we can work with offline to help us be good students of this so that we can get into the conversation and kind of have a good, I see Connie nodding. I knew it was, thank you, Connie. I knew I wasn't alone. So I'd like you to think about how you can help us prepare to be good committee members on this, even though it's an area that'll be new for a lot of us. Secondly, I would just say I'm looking forward to the specificity of some of this because there is so much floating around in our community right now with fears about this, concerns about that, rumors about this, rumors about that. What does it actually mean? What's the town going to turn into? And I know that's not unique, but I think it's very important in our work as citizen members and also on the council to start to get as clear as we can, as fast as we can about what this will actually, in practical terms, not theory, in practical terms mean for our community. So those would be my two, I get an observation and a request. Thank you.
Yes, Patrick, thank you for that observation and request. If I could just respond really quickly that you'll be seeing a lot more pictures from me and diagrams and than many, many words on a page in the next few months. One of the ideas behind a code concept is that we take a very difficult to understand, maybe for some people, or foreign, I should say, concept around zoning and make it much more clear what the physical results are, like where can you see it in your community, the results of this particular rule, and why would we want to change it. So it is my job to make that really easy and concrete for you to understand. And I also am excited about the concreteness of this one aspect of the project within the realm of what a comprehensive plan can be. Vision can be very abstract, and we get to kind of touch the ground and then think big and touch the ground again. And that is actually, I think, a really healthy way to look at a comprehensive plan.
Marcy, I was thinking about what you worked on, what you've been working on as maybe some other educational. I don't know if you want to mention that. Would that be appropriate for the committee, the handbook for the state?
Thanks, Scott. I'll mention that in the next slide because I actually share the covers.
Well, I was going to jump in for just a second and thank you, Mary, for mentioning it. I'm excited to geek out a bit with Marcy on the housing, the like nuts and bolts of the housing piece, but the making information accessible and really accessible to people who don't have that background and don't have a ton of time on the committee, but then also the general public. That's a lot of what we do, and it's something that's going to be very much in the forefront of our mind for the housing work, but then for every chapter of the comp plan update. And I will say, I did cut my teeth in my 20s trying to explain New York City rent control to the public. So I think I think that's definitely, a big part of our a pillar of our engagement is making complicated information and complicated regulations real, important and helping and understandable to the public so that we can use their input to guide our plan. So thank you. And Patrick, you had your hand raised as well.
Yeah, big picture, I think going forward, it'll be nice to learn a little bit more about how much of this plan is predetermined or outlined versus what is out of scope. And that's not for right now, but just getting to kind of Catherine's comments about what people are hearing in the community. Just some of this some of this feels like there's a plan in place and we're here to market it. And I understand that, looking at the slides earlier, there's steps in between, but anyway, but then to the to one specific part of the last slide on the code audit and concepts. I thought it was interesting that it is specific to middle housing or duplex through quads. When you do your code audit and concepts, are you also going to look at the items that are keeping us from doing multifamily 5+ or apartments?
And can we go to the next slide and I'll answer your question, Patrick, a little bit. That apartment buildings is not the focus of our, Scott, can you go to the next slide? It's not the focus of our work to write the code amendments for, or to review apartments. And by state rule, we're really only required to incorporate duplexes on all single dwelling lots, but a lot of cities go further than that. And we will talk about triplexes and fourplexes, and maybe forms of 5 or more that are somewhat common in the middle housing typology, like courtyard apartment buildings of the kind that we used to see, on the edges of downtowns. So yeah, I mean, I get really excited. I can tell Violet gets really excited too about all the varieties of living options there are out there. Cottages, for example, your classic street cottages is multiple small houses on mostly a single lot around shared greens. That's actually a multi-dwelling, that would be considered a multi-dwelling equals apartment kind of development, but it's small scale. It's a middle housing typology, if that makes sense. We're going to be able to get into all of the lovely detail of this, I think. And our goal is to find where are these housing types appropriate and how are we going to help fulfill the needs of the people who live and want to live in Manzanita. The missing middle is often referred to, it's like, because these housing types are needed, but they're not found because we've zoned them out of existence. We're going to change that.
Thanks, Marcy. And I guess I would say that the zoning is also zoned us out of the ability to have workforce housing in a lot of places. And if you look at the packet, we have 0% apartments. And so I thought that was an interesting stat. So hopefully we definitely take care of the state elements, that we have the requirements by the state. And hopefully we also look at this in a 20, 30-year plan, and we maybe think about workforce housing for long-term, and maybe we can get a win-win.
Agree. And I think workforce housing, which is, typically considered to be up to 80% of AMI, 80% or below, this compact housing, what is middle housing, fulfills all of the workforce housing requirements too. They're just providing a wide variety of choice and levels of affordability. And so I just wanted to show you some of the tools that that I often use in this process. We go through each section of your code, your existing comprehensive plan, line by line, to see the barriers, to understand the language that's standing in the way and what we might have to change. We look at that's a representation of the upper table. That's actually something that we used on a project with Layla in Milwaukee. And then I tally up the numerical standards for each zone, so I simplify it, so I can look at it in a kind of form-based way. I can I've gotten really good over the years at being able to look at a zoning code and see the shape of of the development that will result. And we'll be looking at the street standards in the same way, and also then the use standards, because sometimes one of the first changes you have to make in this type of exercise is changing land uses in the residential category to housing types instead of just the binary of single dwelling and multi-dwelling, or as it used to be called, single family, multifamily. We are getting away from that, the definition of a household as a family, and getting more into dwellings in the abstract and trying to define them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stacked, attached, detached, so we're looking more at form and getting out of the land use definition of dwellings. I know this may be hard to understand, but I'll be bringing you into the process and helping us together understand this and the way that it works for Manzanita. The last slide in my section is about this. I really love going around and looking at actual examples of middle housing that both have historically existed and are being built new, because now they're possible under the new Oregon rules. And some of you may have seen this book called Housing Choices Guidebook. It's available on the DLCD website. And you can also have a hard copy. But we're publishing the second edition. I have a DLCD contract to do that, and it's going to have a blue cover. And one of the chapters that we'll be adding to has to do with cottages, and your own classic street cottages is one of the examples that I've selected to put into the new document. So I've been studying this development quite a bit, and I understand what you have had to do in your you at the Planning Commission, and I understand a similar project on 3rd Street is going through. So I'll be combing through all of the things that you have to change to make those projects possible, because our goal is to make these projects possible without a lot of hoops and obstacles, but by right, as people say in the zoning world.
All right, thank you, Marcy.
Thank you.
I would just say too, I know the question about, the public sentiment and understanding some of this housing work. All of the jurisdictions and the county are also going through a code update. So just reminding ourselves that we're not alone in this. You'll hear it at the county level and from your neighboring cities. They're doing similar work with different consultant teams, updating their code as well. They are not typically doing it as part of their comprehensive plan update. So it's kind of a neat time, and that it really worked out well to become compliance with that state requirements and also weave that into the comprehensive plan work. So I think it's excellent timing.
That's good, because we can all work on rumor management together.
Hopefully, yes. So in terms of the community engagement plan, hopefully you had a little bit of time to take a look through that in the packet. If you haven't, that's okay. We'll briefly go through that. If you have questions about it, we can talk about that as well. But really what we like to do when we start a comprehensive plan process is lay out all of the tools we have and all of our objectives and our strategies for how we're going to have robust community engagement as part of the comp plan update. Goal 1 in the state plan, in Oregon state planning goals, is public outreach. It's getting people and community engagement. It's getting people to understand and be involved in the planning process. So super important. It's probably one of the bigger efforts we're going to put into this plan, is making sure that everyone understands and we bring the community along on the way. But those objectives are going to be to inform the community. So highly transparent, accurate information is going to be important. There's some education. Clearly, we just talked about, the need to really understand what middle housing is, what the community is going to look like, what is it going to do to the community. So that education piece is going to be big as well. We want to consult with everyone. We want to make sure that they understand how these decisions are made and that their concerns are heard and weaved into that process, and that their feedback will influence those decisions. We also want to partner with any representatives and agencies. That's important too. And then reaching a diversity of people that in the greater community that really reflects Manzanita and allows us to hone in on that vision and the engagement plan itself. So Violet, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch back on something, one of the things Patrick said and build on what you're saying, which is that I think that the housing piece is going to be really a good way to start. Again, not to just harp on the fact that I think this all makes sense, but in terms of explaining what we understand in terms of what's required, right? So as Patrick talked about how it feels like maybe there's like a plan already there, right? So it's like when we meet with the public, whether it's housing or something else, it's what's required, right? What are we required to do? And then where are the parts where we have choice and there are things that we can decide on how we implement something or how we do it. So showing the public in terms of like what's required by law or forbidden by law, right? Like here's the framework. And then here are the places where we can really make it our own, where we really have some decisions to make and we can hear from the public. And I heard what Martha was saying in terms of taking like land uses. We move into the second phase and talk about land uses. And I think housing land uses, like things like what we used to call single family, and translating or multifamily and translating that into land use terminology where we can start to talk about zoning and we can start to talk about a new land use map, which is going to come out of this. I think actually the fact that we're starting with housing, we'll be talking land uses throughout, but starting with housing is something that feels more accessible to people. They understand what single occupancy or, a single dwelling means, that they understand what an attached dwelling means. They hopefully understand cottages and things like that. So hopefully we'll be starting to engage the public around this idea of making decisions, land use decisions, and updating your code and updating your comprehensive plan and presenting that really technical information in a way that feels important and feels relevant and accessible to people. So again, giving information and then receiving back a lot of feedback in terms of what people want for their community, and then being able to show them in the plan and in the process where that feedback went and how it influenced it, so that people really, at the end of this, hopefully they don't feel like we just came in with a plan already in place, and hopefully they feel a real ownership of the plan. So again, these are our goals around community engagement, and we'll be thinking about all of those pieces throughout. So thank you.
Thanks, Violet. In terms of key messages, these are kind of the four things that if people, this is your elevator speech, I guess, if you will, if people come up to you and say, what is the comp plan? Why are we doing this? The first thing is, we're updating the comp plan. It basically guides our growth and development over the next 20, 30 years. So that's one good answer. We're also updating the housing ordinance to provide more different types of housing and a variety of housing and accessibility and options for Manzanita. I think we also want to talk about the community's vision and how that will create a successful comp plan and those priorities that come out of that. The city of Manzanita is also committed to this inclusive and transparent process, excuse me. So again, this community engagement really is going to guide the plan, and it's going to be a focus of the plan. So having this community engagement plan that sets all this out at the beginning and we follow throughout, and then at the end, we'll actually even summarize it. So there's a bunch of different engagement activities and tools that we're going to kind of lean on throughout this. One is you're a big piece of that engagement in terms of project, the steering committee. I mentioned that we're going to rely on you to host events. I mentioned that we're going to rely on you to invite your friends and family. So those are just some of the things that you all are involved in the engagement plan. We're going to do a set of stakeholder interviews. We'll have a wide variety of people from, business community, environmental community, any sort of community groups that we need to interview, we'll do that. And actually, we're going to have a little ask of you in terms of reviewing our list of people we want to interview and making sure that if you have other ideas, you can add those as well. Violet mentioned in the timeline, we're doing those 4 community workshops or summits, big community events that we'll do. where we invite people to come to an event. And then obviously Planning Commission, City Council will be briefed and be part of that outreach. We want them to be involved in bringing people in that way. We have online engagement where we'll have the website. We'll be doing online surveys, utilizing social media. So that's another important tool. And then at the end, I mentioned this already, but having a report where we kind of reflect back on the community engagement plan and say, hey, what worked and what didn't? I think that's really important, especially when doing this type of plan, is to kind of reflect back and do a report on all the efforts and how they how it worked. And this will also lead into that chapter in the comp plan about what did we do as part of the outreach for updating the comp plan. More tools. I mentioned the project website already. Typically we'll do media release packets if we want to for press. If there's a big event or something that we need to publicize. We're working on project branding. I don't know if you noticed, but we have a wonderful new logo for the project. And we have a color palette and fonts, so that the idea is that we kind of, if someone sees the logo or sees the colors of the fonts, they go, oh, that's the comp plan update. So we're trying to be consistent with that project branding throughout. And then creating other informational materials that we'll put on the website. We have a project email list, so we can do email blasts for events. The website has a little area where you could subscribe and put your email. Or if people come to meetings, we ask for email. So throughout this, we'll have a whole list of folks that we reach out to that provided email lists, so we can engage them throughout the plan update. And this is a preview of the Envision Manzanita website. It is up and running. It's not public yet. It will be public either today or in the next few days. We're trying to get it up on the website. We can allow you to access it now with a password, but I figured we'd just make sure that it was good enough to post publicly. But right now we have a get involved and an about. I suspect as we move through this that we'll start adding other tabs, probably one for middle housing, probably one for any other issues or topics, maybe one for documents, background documents, where we can have a link to the current comp plan. Maybe one for advisory committee meeting packets, a link there. So this will be our project homepage that we'll use to be able to give all the information we need to. Violet Journey, anything else I missed about the public or the engagement plan? Okay. That's that. And then the first thing we're doing.
Connie has her hand up.
Okay, Connie, yes, please.
Hi. A couple of summers ago, we did some meetings also called Envision Manzanita Town Hall Listenings Session. Will that data be referred to, or is this a whole new version of Envision Manzanita?
This is a continuation of Envision Manzanita. That was great work that we don't want to abandon. And actually, it's giving us a leg up, I would say, in terms of starting this planning process, because we already have, you as a city have already started visioning. We have a lot of information there. We actually reviewed a lot of that prior to submitting our proposal because we were really interested in what was already said. So we're familiar with that. But yeah, there's no reason why we shouldn't wrap that into the visioning.
Thanks you
for bringing that up. Okay. One other thing that was in your packet was these things called community conversation kits. And this is kind of our ask of you to really help us with public involvement. So the idea is that these kits allow each of you or anyone, frankly, anyone any public person could take this kit and have their own public meeting is the idea. So it's a meeting in a box where you can go to a specific group that might be meeting. Maybe you have a group that meets for coffee every third Thursday, and you could run a quick meeting with them and get input that way. Maybe you have a book club, and maybe one book club night, you could spend, a half an hour doing a public meeting, and you take this to your book club. So the idea is that we give you these packets and we give you the tools, and then you're able to run your own public meeting, and then give us, the consultant team, back your notes or anything, and we compile all that. And it just is a really great way to get our fingers in the community better than we would be able to if it was just the consultant team or city staff trying to do all the public outreach. So it is an ask of ours that you will, host some of these meetings. But the idea is that you go to you have these meetings and you ask these people these questions. What makes Manzanita special today? Some of the stuff that you've talked about already in your listening sessions. What would you like to change in the future? How do you want to participate? Do you want to come to these meetings? Do you just want to have emails? Do you just want to use the website? Can we rely on you to actually maybe go and do your own community conversation? Sometimes what will happen is you'll do a community conversation and someone in your group will say, oh, can I have one of these? I want to go take it and do this with my family maybe, or my neighbors, and they'll have a community conversation like that. And then also making sure that who else should be involved. We always ask people, who are we not talking to? Who should we talk to when we do these meetings? So we can branch out to even further other participants that want to be involved. Yes, I have a question. Linda.
Oh, hi. I don't know if this is the appropriate place to bring this up, but it's something that's been on my mind about how I can contribute to this group in addition to just generally having these kind of free-form meetings.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about our stakeholders and our business community, especially, and how their opinions matter so much, but they just don't have time.
Yeah.
And I was, one of the things I was wondering is, could we also serve as your, designated conduits? Like I would take 10 of the stakeholders or businesses and say, I'm your point person. If you have questions about this, contact me. I will get the answers to you. And just, I'm trying to think of how to make sure that we're really bringing in important constituents. And how can we do that?
I would say, please, that's a very important thing. And just like you said, beyond maybe doing a community conversation with that group, just letting them know that if they have questions or information, you can be that conduit to bring that back to us as a committee. That would be excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that you'll see in the community engagement plan, when we think about community partners, when you think about organizations that are really important to this process, there's kind of different layers, right? I mean, it's kind of like a spectrum of time commitment and involvement and what's really makes sense for you. So sometimes that's going to be serving on a committee, right? And we really appreciate that, but that's a lot of time. You guys have committed to, not everybody can do that. And so then sometimes it's like, okay, well then is that a group that we want to do for one of our stakeholder interviews, right? So we're going to sit down with this one person or this one small group for an hour and talk about Manzanita, talk about this process and get that feedback. Sometimes that's maybe too much commitment to be on the hook for that. And so maybe it's like, hey, well, would you let us come and host, can I have 30 minutes at your next meeting to come and bring some materials and tell you about what we're doing and have that engagement. And sometimes it's just a, hey, if we send you a link to the website and a link with the date of our next public workshop, will you send it out in your email blast, right? Will you include it in your newsletter? So there's so many different levels of engagement that we really try to be respectful of people's time, but also make sure that we're reaching so many different groups of the committee. So I think you guys, groups of the community. So again, you guys have, connections there. And I think that you'll be a great resource for the project to really kind of bridge that gap and understand when you're going to say, hey, Violet, I think that this person's a great person for you to interview because they have, really deep knowledge about this issue, or I'm going to take the community conversation and go and talk to them where they are. Or, hey, did you reach out to this group so that you can get access to their email list?
Right.
So those kinds of things.
And here's what's happened in the last 2 months. I just want to make sure you knew.
Yeah.
So the back and forth I was thinking about with the business and stakeholder communities. Thanks.
Yeah, and I did want to highlight one of the things when we're putting together our list of stakeholders, because again, we're kind of contracted to do a certain amount. We are looking at all the different kind of, whether it's the development community or it's housing consumers, and we're trying to make sure that we're really being thoughtful in formulating that list. So that we're getting feedback from various points of view across the community and making sure that their interests, because we want to make sure that the plan is equitable and that the benefits and the burdens of these policies are really kind of distributed across and aren't felt too strongly in one part of the community. And so, as we formulate these lists of kind of partnering organizations, again, we try to reflect that we understand that this is a time commitment, but we want to make sure that we get the word out of what we're doing and that we have a really meaningful opportunity to hear from them. Yeah, I see some.
Who was
some
first?
hands.
Go ahead.
I think she's deferring to Rick.
Okay, go ahead, Rick.
You're on mute.
It
Thank
had
you,
to happen to
Catherine.
somebody, and it wasn't me.
Yeah, I'm a pro at this too. That's a rookie mistake. It's been a while. So Violet, I think you got into the edges of the answer to my question, but it's really about how do we coordinate together what those lists are? Because I imagine there will, if we go back to Linda saying, hey, I've got the business contacts, I also have business contacts, so I imagine there's going to be some overlap there.
Yeah.
There's no pain really if somebody gets asked to attend one of these meetings twice, but there is a problem if there's a section where nobody's getting asked, like parents of small children, that kind of, how do we make sure our targeted lists are covering the community? What does that look like?
So I can take the, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'll start. I say, well, first of all, when you, if you do one of these meetings and send back your notes and information, we have basically a spreadsheet. We track what community conversations have happened, what the group was. So there is a tracking of each of these. So we make sure, so we can check that and say, maybe we're halfway into doing these types of meetings and we look at it and say, hey, we're missing a bunch of these groups. Or we've done a really good job at targeting the business community, but we haven't met with, these folks that represent this part of the community. So that's kind of the tool we're using. It's kind of rudimentary, but the tracking sheet is really the best we've got at this point. If anyone had other ideas on how we can make sure that we do that, I would love to have them and entertain that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's why we have a job. So it's our job to design it going in, to really brainstorm who should we be talking with, and then monitor as the project team, monitor as we go forward. What are we accomplishing those kind of, lofty goals we set at the beginning? And are there really places where we need to pivot? Or are there places where it's like, hey, we said we were going to reach out to this group, but that hasn't really resulted in much engagement. So we're either going to reach out to, we're going to sit down as a team and brainstorm. And I will say that the project team meets every 2 weeks, like clockwork, to check in on everything that we're doing on the project. So, that's part of our job.
So we need a plan for this. So I will respectfully say, and hopefully model it. I'm having my first major disconnect moment in the process for the whole meeting. So what I'm counting on is that we're just early into it and I'm not understanding enough yet what the actual plan is. Because I don't see us sort of ad hoc going out saying, oh, I'd like to meet with my book group. I'd like to do da-da-da. We've got a stakeholder list that's a priority list of communities.
Yeah.
They're first. So I guess and maybe it's a roles and responsibilities thing too. So who has the leadership role to orchestrate the list of people, matching it up against the people on this committee and who they can actually effectively cover, understand where we have gaps then that need to be filled, and then going after solving that to figure out if we don't have somebody on the committee who can cover it, who else can do that. I got very nervous at the whole ad hoc sort of way that was presented. So you can shake your head that I'm wrong, but hang on a second.
No.
This is
not wrong.
No,
not wrong.
Hey, but we're getting to know each other. So, and I'm direct, just people who know me know. This is the most important, this is the most important piece of the entire thing. So I don't see us having a single one of these conversations with a kid, with anybody, until we've got a solid plan that hits probably 80% of our stakeholder groups. And we know who's responsible for doing what. And if we don't have the power, the people power on this committee to do that, then who's accountable? Who in the committee? Is it me? Is it Layla? Is it you? Who's accountable for filling that gap? So that by the time we get to our first, and when do these occur? Are they occurring prior to our first community event? It's got to be orchestrated with the communications coming out of the committee too. So I know someone's going to put me at ease now, so please feel free
That's
to
my
jump
job.
in. Okay. So
That's my job.
Let's hear some more about that then, please.
Yes, and I think that I was shaking my head at the please don't worry, because I think I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I'm not just putting you at ease, but just clarifying what we said. So one of the things that we did for the committee, and this is a good time to mention it, is a week in advance, we send out the materials. What we're focused on now is designing that outreach. And so in that public engagement plan is we're starting to formulate that list, right? A list of organizations, a list of interests. And what Scott mentioned at the beginning is we would like feedback on that, written feedback in the next week to make sure that before we put anything on the website that we have your feedback. That feedback, what would be excellent on this particular document are dropping a comment and saying, I have a connection to this group. I am willing. Now, I am not, as part of the team, going to assign you to go do a meeting, right? Some of you have time for that. Some of you do not have time for that. So what I am counting on is for you to say in the engagement plan to highlight, I have a connection here. Or here is an organization that's not on your list that is vital to the business development, or is vital to consumers, or is vital to environmental group, or a bike group, or, pedestrian, whatever it is that you have. We are asking you, in commenting on our engagement strategy, we're sitting here still designing it. We're making those lists over the next week to let me know that you have a connection. And whether or not you are willing to take an engagement kit, which we wanted you to look at and see, and you can give us feedback at this point too of how you feel about the kit, because that was part of your material. I'm sorry, I have your comment can be, there's a group you're missing, or I have a connection to this group, and yes or no, am I willing to go and do a meeting, or I can provide an email to you of who to contact at that group to further engagement with them. That is the tangible way that we get this stuff done over the next couple of months, and make sure that we are hitting all of those groups that we are. So again, the draft, and I think it might be the lawyer in me, I always think of it as it's a living, breathing document, right? We have a public engagement plan. We drafted at the beginning as a committee. We're starting to formulate what are our goals, who should we be talking to? And that is something that it doesn't just go in an appendix eventually, although it will. It gets changed, it gets worked on. Next time we talk to you, we'll come back and say, okay, this is what we talked about last time. There have been 10 of these meetings. Those meetings have occurred with the following groups. So again, I don't want, while I will not assign you, to say you have to go do 5 meetings, or everybody, this is not, I'm not sending you out into the community to sell chocolate bars and come back. What I really want is to know from you, what kind of time do you have? Who do you have contacts with? And what do you think is missing, or is maybe inappropriate, or whatever, in terms of our list of organizations? And I think we get written comment over that over the next week. And then over the coming weeks, I believe we're going to have, I think, I don't know if we still give this to Cody at the city, who is not yet there yet, but we'll be Layla's liaison at the city to help keep that spreadsheet, keep that list, and make sure that we're hitting all of those organizations. So it may be that if, say, 2 or 3 of you respond to the draft with, I have a connection at this organization, You may get an email from me that says, hey, the three of you have all voiced that you have this connection. Who would like to take point on this? Who does it make sense to go and have a meeting, right? Or to go and engage that group. So it's not going to be ad hoc. We're not, just sending you out. Again, the only caveat to that is, if you want to go to the farmer's market and if we end up with a flyer or whatever and say, hey, this is happening, or just telling people about it. But in terms of the kits, in terms of making sure we're hitting those organizations, we do want it to be much more organized than just say, okay, great, now you're on the committee, now go out and have these meetings. I think it's a vital piece of it, but it also needs to be organized. And we need to be keeping the pulse on it throughout, which is ultimately that'll be me. So
Yeah.
I was raising my hand to volunteer when you said who's going to be taking that. I was raising my hand as a volunteer, and I was shaking my head at the idea of it being just ad hoc. So you're free to have whatever worries you want and to voice them at whatever time you want. And I think you'll learn. I'm pretty transparent and blunt myself. So I think we're gonna do just fine on that.
Yeah, and just, I don't know if this matters, but I figured I'd just say it anyway. So I'm working on Seaside's comprehensive plan right now. And we did community conversations with similar kits about 6-8 months ago. And I'm just explaining kind of what happened, but after the meeting, a couple of committee members sent a couple emails in saying, hey, we're gonna go talk to these two groups. And they took that on. And so we tracked that, and then we let the rest of the group know that we've already kind of covered these groups. So it's iterative with that's how it happened there too, is so we didn't have a list that was formalized until people started raising their hand, covering groups, and then we communicate back the areas that we're lacking. I think that, and that's our responsibility as the consultant team.
Yeah, and also Scott, I think Scott and I worked together on the comprehensive plan update for Salem. And there were times, Rick, going back, I think you were the one who made a comment earlier, in terms of, if we do need to pivot, if we're seeing that something's not working, on that particular project, we recognized that there were a lot of groups who were willing to have these small meetings. And so we ended up taking the bigger map that we had used in the workshop and creating little small kind of 8.5 by 11 with little dots that they could put on. Because we recognized that all of a sudden we had people who were willing to go to those meetings, and we wanted to be able to capture that information and get those ideas from those groups. And it worked really, really well. And we were able to kind of summarize that engagement, take photos of that they had made more on the fly, and kind of putting pins in things and stuff. So I think that we've, again, it's a lot of strategy goes into it, a lot of oversight goes into it. But again, I just don't want to get in your way of talking to your community, when as you get information about the project, kind of talking to your neighbors and talking to groups that you're in. I don't recommend bringing it up at your book club. I don't know. I might get I might get kicked out of my book club. But anyway, again, it's this threading that needle between being too prescriptive of like, this is exactly what has to happen and this is who exactly has to do it. We want you guys to really be able to have conversations with your neighbors about the process, but at the same time keeping enough track of it that it feels that we're being strategic and we're targeting our conversations to make sure that we're hitting all of those very important groups, and keeping an eye for kind of underrepresented or groups that are also groups that are just historically very difficult to engage and get to come to group. I think we put youth on the list, and that's not always a group that shows up at our meetings, and things like that. So again, a lot of thought goes into this. It is very strategic, and we will be coordinating with you guys. And I have to say, if the coordination around this meeting is any judge, I think everybody was very respectful and helpful and responsive. And so I really look forward to coordinating these community engagements with you as well.
And I also just said, this is one of our engagement tools. So this isn't our silver bullet, these, for community outreach. It's one of our tools. Those, we'll have the big summits, we'll have the online engagement. So remembering that this is really, I want to use these to kind of affirm that vision. And so that we did those listening sessions and we can kind of move from the vision into the comp plan as a kind of the goal for using these community conversations. In terms of what's in the kit itself, you have a preparation checklist just to kind of make sure you have everything you need to run the meeting. There's a presenter's guide that kind of walks you through what could be up to a 60-minute meeting. Sometimes these meetings are 20 minutes, sometimes they're an hour. And there's some tips in there for leading a discussion. There's a set of questions and a place to take notes on those questions. We also include a sign-in sheet. The reason we like the sign-in sheet is just because we're trying to build up that email list, if you will. So that helps us know who was there and contact them later in the later if they'd like to stay involved. So those are the main contents of the kit. We talked a little bit about these groups. I won't go through them all, but I think the important part is what we're talking about here is there is kind of an interest and then a specific organization list that's in the public involvement plan. And I think if I could have, this is really the piece that I would love you to focus on as a committee is this section here. You know, if you, again, just like Violet said, highlighting someone you might be interested in doing these meetings with in this list, or adding to the list, or taking away if you feel like maybe some of these organizations are not relevant to the comp plan update. So again, focusing on the list, I think for your feedback purposes and identifying who you may want to do a meeting with so we can start organize that is really kind of one of the takeaways we'd love to get from you feedback from. Okay. Before I get to next steps, is there
any questions about the kits? Any lingering concerns about how we're kind of asking you guys to engage with the public?
Yeah, Rick.
I need to probably study it more.
Okay.
But I'm visual. And so a 2 to 3 slide deck or handout just to explain the background of what the heck we're doing.
Okay.
What is a comprehensive plan? What are our expectations of you in this meeting? It feels like that's missing to me right now. And,
okay.
You know, brief, like, let's not go nuts about it, but it's, hey, there's this cool thing called Comprehensive Plan in Oregon. It's these 19 things. And Manzanita, we're focused on, what are we focused on? 17 of them, 16 of them?
Yeah.
And it's these 16. And what I'm asking of you in this meeting, the outcome of this meeting needs to look like this. That feels missing to me at this point.
Okay.
Like a fact sheet or like a handout kind of thing. Is that what you mean? Like, would that be helpful if
Yes.
there was, if the
Like-
kit included, like often we'll do one for like tabletop kind of handout for.
Yeah, I'm imagining, I'm not imagining. I don't know exactly what my environment is going to be for these meetings. I'm sure I'm going to use the Pine Grove Community House whenever I can, because I know Connie and I are members there. Catherine is as well. And if I'm missing some of you folks, apologize. But
And Linda.
And Linda, yeah, Linda. But I don't think we're going to have tech necessarily. So it's a paper copy that I can put in front of somebody. Reusable would be great. So we're not constantly leaving paper everywhere, but just simple visuals to say, this is why we've asked you to come together and what we're hoping you can contribute to this. And that to be efficient. You know, I don't want it to be a 20-minute introduction to the thing, but why did I say yes to you, Rick? And what do you want from me? I wanted to answer that.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. And I think we can work on adding that. Yeah, I see a couple of hands and I have no idea who is first.
Go, John.
John.
Let me just ask a quick, it's not exactly a technical question, but in the big picture, when we meet with a group, explaining what we're up to, that's an obvious one, but are we trying to winnow down the 16 or 17 goals? I mean, probably goal 10 is a given, but are we trying to find out who's interested in what? Are we trying to delve into any particular point with any kind of detail? And I see those as kind of different meetings. And maybe we're going to end up doing more than one meeting with a specific group. But what's your experience with that, Violet? Are you thinking broad first, or?
Yes, I can jump in too, Violet, but yeah,
Yeah.
this is
Thank you, Scott.
this is the broad vision right now. The thing I say that, but when you get into these meetings, you'll find that people have very specific things that they want to talk about. So, it is
Right.
it is a broad vision discussion, but it's also, well, if this is important to you, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I think Scott, we've got these Scott's got, we've got these questions up here that are kind of like starting the conversation. Right?
Yeah.
What makes Manzanita special? What would you like changed in the future? For one group, that may be very general, right? That may be a general idea of the changes they want to see. One group might be like, I hate this zoning requirement, and I want to have a conversation about parking. I want to have a conversation about, I don't know if it's beach access, whatever it is that they want to talk about. And I would just beg and plead that that you take some note when you leave of what were your takeaways. I'm not expecting minutes of exactly what was said, but say, hey, these are their concerns. These are their ideas. How would you like to participate? Hey, we have an organization that wants to host a meeting, right? Or we have an organization that wants to host an event, or they're interested in coming to meetings, or they just want to, they'll advertise our meetings and kind of share our documents or share progress. This could be a real partner. So again, it's like if you kind of take those 4 pillars of conversation, right? Like what makes us special? What do you want to change? How do you see participating in the comp plan update? What are you willing to do, or what are you interested in doing? And who else, right? Who do you think needs to be at the table that we might be missing? And then though, if I get, and then I'm sitting and distilling all of that back from all of you guys, and keeping track of it, then we can say, okay, well, now who else is involved? It may be that I'm going to send out an email to my lovely committee and ask, hey, we've heard back that we should engage this part of the community. Does anyone have a contact? Does anyone know who we can contact? Do you have an email? Do you have an idea? Do you know if they meet? Things like that. So again, you guys are kind of the bridge between the planning team and the public, and really helping city staff to, kind of expand, like Scott said, kind of get our fingers in all the pies and try to make sure that we're engaging as many people in meaningful, dialogue as possible, and hearing back and reporting back what we've heard. Yeah, Linda.
I was just wondering if I was changing my mind about asking. I just noticed a lot of the people that you've listed in the stakeholder group and our area in general is very, we're the Nehalem Bay region. And so how do we make these groups that are covering the region want to focus in on Manzanita?
Yeah.
And how much do we provide that?
I would say that,
does that make any sense?
It is, I mean, clearly this is the comprehensive plan for the city of Manzanita, but
right,
to our region. I mean, you all work together with your sister cities that live, that are adjacent and along the North Coast with you, and they should be, involved too. They have ideas about Manzanita. A lot of the people that work in Manzanita don't live in Manzanita. You know what I mean? So I think that, those broader groups it is going to be important to get out there. And I think the way you frame it is, you may not live in Manzanita, but you probably take advantage of Manzanita. You probably use it. So you're just as much a stakeholder as a citizen. I think you don't have to be a citizen to be a stakeholder in a comprehensive plan update.
And
That's-
I will just reiterate something that the mayor said earlier in terms of the rumor mill. So a lot of these communities are also updating they have grants to update their housing ordinances as well. As Scott said, they're not doing comprehensive planning right now, but there's going to be, particularly at those regional groups, there's going to be discussion over who's doing what and what's required and what's allowed. And so I think that's going to be important is making sure that as a representative who's working on this work in Manzanita, that you're hearing what their concerns are, you're hearing what they're talking about in terms of how the project process is going, and reporting out how we're doing it, right? And what's happening, or what's being dictated, or how we're engaging the community, and just making sure that information is correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, Catherine, I think you were first.
I like Linda's question because it's
Okay.
a real logical one to ask, and I think the answer to that was good. When we started out talking about this in council, and as I've personally been speaking to people about it, I've been emphasizing how connected we all are, and we are. I mean, in just every way you could imagine. So I think it'll be some art to looking at the list, which is very organization oriented to start with, but this is where I think good creative input from the members of this committee could be really important. So, I mean, I would just suggest we all kind of do a laser focus, the narrowest focus we would have, which would just be the literal city limits and the urban growth boundary, which is about as tight as you can be. And just think about what's on that list that represents the people, all of us, the communities there, and what's missing. And then look more broadly. And I mean, we're not talking about the whole state. I mean, we're getting to probably Neocani to the north and Wheeler to the south, and a little bit of regional views of things. But I'm very interested in I can't remember who brought it up as an example, but somebody said, parents of small children, that's a group. So I would love to get, and we need the input from the people on this team to think about the stuff that's not on this list yet, which is more like not what we belong to, but who the kinds of people and the interests that we have. The surfing community is nowhere on this list.
Yep.
Should it be? John, I'm sure it could get us all hooked up with that part of the world, but so let's think about just the groups, the way they're not all organized groups with a board, but that's kind of a simple way to start. But let's get creative about who the groupings are, and then we can figure out how to get at those groups of people, kind of where they live. I like that the faith-based groups are on here. We never really talk about that in the city at all. I mean, we don't, but that's going to be a way to reach people in the community that's very different than the city typically does. So I'm sure we'll get some creative suggestions that speak more to not just what we belong to, but who we are, just in our kind of our natural way of being in town here and what interests us.
Yeah, I love that. I also would say, when you're reviewing these, if you think there's like some real high priority things, I would highlight those. Say, this is one that we can't miss. Let us know. That type of thing is helpful too. Linda, you have something else?
I just wanted to add on to Catherine's thing, and I don't know if I can't believe I'm saying this. We need another meeting, just internally, but I feel like I would. I might not think of a lot of the groups that you're talking about, but if we were in a group setting and sort of just brainstorming, I would be more apt to come up with a broader list than I would on my own, and that's all I'm trying to say.
Well, let's see if we might have 10 minutes or so at the end. We could do that.
Okay.
I think that looks like we may have time at this point, so that's good.
Okay. Connie?
Yeah, Connie.
Well, I can wait for that 10-minute period, but we don't have a Rotary Club here. We don't have Kiwanis. but we do have the Mysterious Golf Mafia and some other groups that,
Awesome.
you know, we need to think of those groups of people like the Hoffman Art Center folks who may otherwise be overlooked because it's just communicating with everyone. And the Golf Mafia is a very important group.
Good to know. We don't want to mess with the Golf Mafia. Thank you. Okay, let's do the next steps. And then I think if we have time, I think we will, we could do a short brainstorm on people we want to make sure we involve. So for you, this is kind of your homework page, and we talked a little bit about this all throughout the meeting today. But please review that charter and provide any comments by next Wednesday. I would appreciate that. If you don't have any comments, then you don't have to review and send it in. The same goes with the engagement plan. I think, frankly, that's the most important thing that we would love to have your input and review on is that engagement plan, particularly the list of folks we want to engage. We're going to send a meeting summary after every one of our meetings. It's not really meeting minutes. It's just a summary of what, the higher level topics and things that we discussed and maybe some actions that need to take place. So we'll send that out by, I think, Monday. And then, so those are kind of your review and get back to us. And then we will coordinate with you, or if you have things you want to email with those community conversations. The email that we're going to use is for Cody, who is interning for the city and is going to be a help with this. So I think we're going to utilize him to help with the coordination and of the community conversations. Of course, Journey and Violet and I will be involved in that as well. We'll send out that doodle poll for the September meeting in about a month or so. And again, we figured what we'll do is we're going to use Cody to kind of collect all of the information through our committee. So utilizing these emails, and we'll make sure that we send this out to the committee afterwards as well. Kind of your next steps. It'll be important that you have this. So we'll follow up with an email on this so you know what's going on. Yeah, Rick?
The comments you're asking for are going to be sent into Cody as well?
Yes, please. I think that's the idea, is that we're going to use that email as our main committee conversation point.
Got it. Thank you.
Perfect. And then in terms of next steps from the project perspective, we're going to be doing the community engagement and kind of honing in on that vision that you've been working on for a couple of years now. We're going to launch the website in the next couple of days. So that'll be great to have that. We can start pointing people towards that. We'll start stakeholder interviews as well as those community conversations. And we plan to have an online survey that kind of reflects some of the same questions that we're going to be asking in the community conversations. And then our next meeting will be in September. And then looking forward beyond that will be that large public workshop or summit sometime in October. So that's kind of where we are with that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we have time. We have another 14 minutes if we want to do a little brainstorming on these groups. I think that would be a good use of this time. So we had, I guess I'll start with what I've heard so far. I heard surfing community, the mafia golfers.
Let's just call them the golfers in our
Golfers, men's group and women's group.
Okay.
This is John. I'll add to that idea of another group is the Dunes Association, which has been a stakeholder since the mid-90s and are referred to in Ordinance 95-6. I'm the current president of the association, so I think it'd be good to get them on the stakeholder list, and I'll be obviously updating them throughout the process.
Great.
Hoffman
I'll send
Center.
an email out on that too. I was already drafting it.
I think there's a bunch of small, like, you've got an art group in town, and they're all pretty ad hoc, but you've got, the golfers is like that. You had a bunch of gardeners in town. They do the Wonder Garden and various things around. Some of them do the community garden. You've got dog people. You could probably get a list of 40 people just by going in 4Paws and looking at their list. And there may be cat people too. I don't know why, but
Watch it, man.
there was an article
think
in
we
New York
said to
Times
keep
this
this
morning about
simple.
why cats are better than dogs, but I didn't get it. You know, you've got boy, that's my quick list off the top of my head.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I think so.
Sorry, my headphones decided to die right in the middle. So I had to switch. I will say, I love that we're brainstorming now. If you have a chance after the meeting, to look through the 4 phases of the project, because you mentioned art group, you know, each of these kind of subject areas, looking at like, oh, okay, we're going to have a meeting where we talk about, you know, culture and art and community, you know, that may trigger for you guys some organizations. So if you want to just take a minute and look through the statewide planning goals and the way we're going to phase the content of the way of what we're engaging people around, that could be a great way to brainstorm some organizations as well.
I'll bring that up.
Thanks. Let's keep going.
I think the business community is kind of underrepresented. We've got visitors associations, but I would add, I think Connie and Linda brought this up, but 2 things. Number one, the business community has historically been underserved, and they're a little frustrated by that. And number 2, there's a lack of trust because they've been treated as outsiders for a long time. So they have a lot of valuable ideas that they're a little hesitant to share because there's a sense with some people that I've heard where there can be repercussions, you know, from the city. So number 1, I think we need to put these people in, make sure they're stakeholders. And number 2, give them the opportunity not only to sign a list with their name, but also provide anonymous feedback, because it's going to be valuable, but you will not get it if you're going to force them to tell you who they are. So with that being said, I would say that we should invite every owner of every business on Lanita at the very beginning, and others that you know, are off that grid. I think as valuable as, you know, parents with children, I would say the staff that staff the businesses that we have are going to have valuable information on how it is to live here or rent here or travel here from 30 miles away. And then maybe in addition to staff, maybe cleaners, the folks, there's got to be hundreds of people that are out on the weekends, Fridays, Saturdays, cleaning up, you know, all these houses, short-term rentals, et cetera. There's this undercurrent or underground group of people that we don't interact with very much, but they're critical to the survival and vibrance of our town.
Yes, that's a very, very important point. And I think that there was earlier discussion about workforce housing, and Marcy was talking about 80% of AMI for those who don't engage with HUD that much, area median income. And so we are looking at, you know, and one of the good things about AMI is it's pegged to your region and by household size. And so we really can look and say, you know, are we reaching, you know, or try to find a way to monitor and make sure that we're reaching people who are in that workforce housing piece where it's like they're making, you know, less than the median income for the city, for the region, but maybe, you know, really vital to being engaged as part of this process. So you know, and I think there may be groups or you know, if there is one kind of employer or, you know, around, you're talking about cleaning services, I think that, you know, if there is some way to kind of engage them as a community, that would be really important to know, and might be different for different cities or different places.
And I was just thinking back to what you mentioned, Violet, about the phasing, and then you were talking about we should invite every business owner on Lanita. I think that's great. Maybe though, if we don't happen to get to them during the community conversations point, when we get to that 3rd round of engagement where we focus on economic development, for example, it might be good to just have a specific, a business group meeting right for that specific focused area as well. So there's times where I appreciate you've said that, Violet, because there is times when we're going to be focusing on elements of the comp plan where we do want to look at specific groups. So
Scott, I mean, be careful. I'll just say this, be careful about pigeonholing them out to the third phase. Because they're a critical element of all 4 phases.
You're
They're
right.
constantly being pigeonholed, and without housing, a lot of these businesses don't work. So they're a key role, they're a key player in more than just economic development.
Very good
Yeah,
advice.
and I think the first phase where we're talking about housing and we're talking about cultural, like historic cultural background of Manzanita, but then also when we move into infrastructure and land use, I think citing of commercial land uses, I think that's going to be, I think they're going to be key. And I will say also, it's not entirely just various groups don't want to put their name necessarily on surveys and things. In fact, when we take classes at PSU about survey writing, they say, you know, be careful adding any kind of demographic or email, like having the email sign up be different from the survey, because people want to be able to just give their ideas and give their feedback without that. And that's true across interest groups, I think, as well. So it's something that we're definitely aware of, but we're still able to get engagement.
I think, Rick, were you next?
Yeah, happy to go. Just 2 quick points from me. So I mentioned it earlier, but the Pine Grove Community House has 151 members. Not all of them are Manzanita, but I would guess 70% and north is Manzanita. And also just reiterating Patrick's excellent points on the business community. I don't think the way to approach this is through the Tillamook Coast Visitor Association. I don't even know if they're members of that. It is door-to-door canvassing. It is showing up, talking to them, saying, we really want you involved with this. I think Linda Kay, you made the point earlier, these people are working full-time, so where do you catch the windows that they'll be built? That's a conversation.
Right.
What's the small amount of time you can carve out that you can lend your thoughts and important opinions on this project? And I absolutely agree to do it immediately, do it right away. And hey, if they want to show up in the 3rd session for just the economic aspect of it, that's their choice.
Yeah.
But Patrick, your point is very valid. They should weigh in on all of it, or at least be invited to do so.
Great.
Yeah, and I think, Rick, your idea of like a, you know, kind of a handout of like, this is what the project is, this is what we're asking you to do. Again, as in the next, you know, week or so, when you guys give us feedback on the design of our outreach, and acknowledging or finding a way to note, like, you know, this is an interest that I don't think is going to be interested in maybe coming to an event, or maybe they will come to an event. Again, we're still formulating that stakeholder interview list. So again, Patrick, if there is somebody that you think would put their name on it and be willing to sit down one-on-one and have a conversation, that's good information for us to have. If an interest is a group that has a regular meeting, you know what I mean? Like, again, that knowledge, that local knowledge of, you know, how organized is this interest group? How cohesive how cohesive of a group is it? Or is it a, you know, hey, we want to, or I'm not going to pigeonhole surfers into being not organized. But I will say, you know, or is this a like, hey, we need to take that flyer that's from the conversation kit and we need to see if somebody's willing to go door to door, or if somebody's willing to go tack it up at the coffee shop where this group meets on a regular basis. And just at least be able to say, hey, you know, we reached out and we were not able to schedule a one-on-one interview with anybody who was willing to put their name down. We reached out and, you know, they don't really have a regular meeting that anybody from the committee can go and present information and kind of report out to them and engage them in a formal setting. They don't have an email subscription list, so I can't just ask them to send out a blast promoting our event to make sure their members know that what we're gonna be talking about and when, so that they can come individually and engage. You know, but I was able to, you know, go and go door to door and try to like share that information. So again, it's what you guys have time to do, us making sure that we get you the materials that you need, and us keeping track and saying that we really you know, and figuring out where we need to kind of plug those gaps and where we need to maybe double down on our efforts.
So we've got 2 minutes left. I know we didn't get through our entire brainstorming.
Connie has a question, and
please.
Linda Kay has
Okay.
her hand up.
I have a question, and then Linda Kay may actually take it from there. But I'm thinking of volunteering to go to each management company and find out if their cleaners gather at a certain time and speak to their cleaners, because I'm not fluent in Spanish, but there are a lot of Spanish speakers that we don't notice in town. And you know, that's one little avenue of something that might be unique to Manzanita. But I would like to have us local folks have the opportunity to meet up and brainstorm in person, with or without coffee, before we get back to you in a week. So Linda Kay, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree, Connie. And then I just wanted to add on to what Patrick was saying, because he said it better than I did. I really am worried about the business community. My husband's on the County Housing Commission. We've been having conversations sort of casually with people around town. And I'm frankly kind of shocked by some of the things I'm hearing, because they're opposite of what we think, or what I thought our businesses wanted. So I feel like this is a best opportunity we've had in a long time to really engage with the business community, to give them an opportunity to see our faces, and have, like, this is why I was saying the dedicated person might be a way to go for those businesses that feel like they're being excluded or not heard, to have that voice for us to bring back things and maybe give them that anonymity that they need, but also show that what they have to say matters and that it's being heard. And I don't know. Anyway, I'd be happy to meet with you, Connie, and anyone else who's interested, to think about how we can make that happen in an effective way that's
I'll join
meaningful
in
to
on that
them.
too.
Yeah. Thanks,
Awesome.
Patrick.
Thank you.
All right, I'll add one thing just to I know we're now out of time, and I just want to reiterate, I love that you guys are going to be having these conversations. We can, you know, let me know if you think, you know, a week is enough time for you to give us feedback on the public involvement plan. Again, the design is really, again, you're going to meet 8 times. A month in advance, you'll get the doodle poll. A week in advance, you'll get the materials. You'll have a week after the meeting to give us written comment on the materials. We'll provide a summary the Monday after the meeting that you can say, yeah, that reflects the meeting I was at, you know, I'm comfortable with this, or, you know, and then a week after each of our meetings, it'll go up on the website, and the website will have the PDF from the PowerPoint from the meeting. It'll have the summary, the agenda, the summary, and a copy of the packet. So people who weren't at the meeting can access all of that information. They can watch the meeting on YouTube if they want. If they don't have time, they can read the summary. They can look at the packet of what materials you guys were provided with before the meeting, so they have a context. And that'll be true for each meeting as we go forward. So hopefully those time frames work for you. If not, please let me know. And we can, you know, if you're just like, a week's just not enough time, let me know. And we can adjust that as necessary now, as we're just getting started on the process.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to working with you on this. Catherine, Layla, I don't know if you want any parting words for us before we leave the meeting. Okay. Well, again, thanks for being part of this committee. It's going to be work, and I appreciate your help and time, but look forward to working with you. So have a great
Thank you, everyone.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, all.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.